When a man walks through life, he carries with him a silent armor. This armor is not made of steel or leather. It is made of pride. It is made of the image he has carefully built over the years. His achievements, his strength, his ability to provide, his status. These things form the foundation of his identity. And when you touch that foundation, even lightly, he feels it like a tremor in his soul. You see, the ego is like a mirror. It reflects back what the man wants to see. He wants to feel strong, needed, admired. But the secret is, obsession does not grow from admiration. Obsession is born in the space between desire and insecurity. When you speak to a man's heart, he feels seen. But when you touch his ego in a way that shakes it, he feels challenged. And that challenge awakens something primal within him. You do not need to be loud. You do not need to be cruel. You only need to be unmoved. When he expects you to be impressed, be calm. When he boasts of his strength, nod gently and ask about his weakness. When he tells you he is different, ask him to show you, through action, not words. When he believes he has won your attention, let your silence remind him he still has more to earn. A man who is never questioned becomes complacent. But a man who feels he must prove himself will continue returning to the place that unsettles him. He will not admit it, but he will feel it. The energy, the pull, the quiet storm of a woman who cannot be conquered with charm alone. His mind will race with questions. Why doesn't she chase me? Why do I care what she thinks? Why do I need her validation? And in that moment, he is no longer thinking about the world. He is thinking about you. To awaken obsession is not to manipulate. It is to stand so deeply in your worth that a man cannot help but feel the gap between who he is and who he wants to be in your presence. That gap, it burns in him, it whispers to him, it calls him to rise, not because you demanded it, but because you reflected back to him a version of himself that he is still becoming. True power is not in the breaking, but in the stillness that reveals who is truly in control. And when a man realizes that your world does not spin around his approval, he is drawn closer, not to dominate, but to understand, not to possess, but to be chosen. And when he is chosen, he will never stop trying to deserve it. Because you were the one who looked beyond his armor and made him feel bare. You were the mirror that did not reflect his ego, but his soul. A man's ego is not something he wears on his sleeve, yet it follows him into every room. It is shaped from the time he is a boy, when he is told to be strong, to succeed, to never show weakness. He grows up measuring his value through the eyes of others, how much he earns, how admired he is, how respected he appears. His identity becomes deeply intertwined with how the world reacts to him, and over time, this ego becomes a shield, something he relies on for protection and affirmation. He learns to project confidence, capability, and control, not always because he feels those things deeply, but because the world has taught him that those qualities are necessary for worth. When a man walks into a room, his pride walks ahead of him. It introduces him before his words do. His image becomes his were. His image becomes his armor. Whether he's speaking of his job, his strength, his goals, or his past, what he's often truly communicating is this: see me, validate me, respect me, and he often does not even realize it. The ego operates quietly, subconsciously. It doesn't shout, it whispers, pushing him to win, to dominate, to be the center of admiration. He might mistake this for confidence, but confidence is secure and quiet. Ego, on the other hand, is loud in silence. It demands recognition without always speaking it aloud. What makes the male ego so fragile is its dependency on external validation. It needs to be fed by reactions, by compliments, by agreement. This isn't always about arrogance. It's about identity. If a man has built his self-worth on being seen as strong, smart, successful, or charming, then any moment that challenges that image can feel like an attack. Even a simple question that doubts his certainty, or a woman who doesn't fall for his usual ways, can stir discomfort in him, and yet, that discomfort is not rejection. It's a mirror. a reflection of where his worth truly stands. The ego thrives in spaces where it is constantly stroked, where there is no resistance, no need to prove. But once resistance appears, even in the gentlest form of indifference or emotional restraint, the ego becomes unsettled. It begins to question, and in that questioning, a man starts to notice the woman who caused it. She did not insult him. She did not dismiss him. She simply did not bend. And that shakes him more than loud words ever could. That quiet resistance whispers that perhaps she sees beyond the mask. Perhaps she sees the man he is, not just the man he shows. And that thought pierces the ego deeply. The more deeply a man's sense of self is rooted in how others perceive him, the more vulnerable his ego becomes when met with someone who does not respond predictably. And it is in this exact place, where his pride is gently but powerfully disrupted, that something begins to stir within him, something he cannot easily name or dismiss. It is not pain, it is not anger, it is fascination. Obsession is rarely born from being admired. Admiration is comfortable, predictable, and safe. When someone is constantly praised, their mind relaxes because it feels seen and validated. But obsession, true, consuming obsession, emerges from something far more complex. It rises in the quiet storm between desire and uncertainty, between the need to feel important and the subtle fear of not being enough. When a man is admired, he feels secure. But when he is challenged in ways he doesn't fully understand, something deeper is activated within him. That's where obsession begins. A woman who offers only admiration will be appreciated, but not necessarily obsessed over. She becomes part of the chorus, one more voice confirming what he already believes about himself. But a woman who doesn't offer that immediate approval, who instead triggers a slight question in his mind about how she truly sees him, becomes unforgettable because she introduces a tension his ego cannot immediately resolve. And the ego hates tension. It seeks resolution, completion, control. But when that resolution is withheld, the mind can't rest. The thought of her lingers. The curiosity deepens. There's something powerful about subtle rejection, not an outright denial, but a gentle refusal to be swayed by charm or power. It's not cruelty, it's clarity. It's the woman who isn't pulled into his world, but instead remains grounded in her own. This creates an imbalance in his usual pattern. Most men are used to being the ones who lead the emotional pace. They're accustomed to the validation that comes with being pursued or praised. But when the dynamic shifts and he finds himself unsure, even slightly insecure, he becomes more invested. He begins to seek clarity. He tries harder. He wonders what makes her different. And that wondering becomes a loop he can't escape. The most intense forms of interest often come from emotional disruption, not emotional comfort. When he feels emotionally safe, he feels settled. But when he feels slightly unworthy, slightly off balance, slightly unsure of his effect on you, he begins to work for it. And the more he works for it, the more emotionally entangled he becomes. His thoughts begin to circle around the mystery, the tension, the lack of immediate satisfaction. That hunger grows. And hunger, when not immediately satisfied, turns into obsession. This is not about playing games, it's about understanding human nature. When a man feels that something or someone is just out of reach, but not entirely gone, he keeps reaching. It is the possibility that keeps him coming back, not the guarantee. When a woman stands in her power and does not give herself away emotionally or mentally too quickly, she creates that space. The space where his desire and insecurity collide, and in that collision, something far stronger than mere interest is born. Something that doesn't fade easily. Something that keeps him returning, questioning, and craving. Obsession is not about being perfect. It's about being the one who made him feel uncertain in a way he couldn't control. When a man expects a reaction and doesn't receive it, it shakes something deep inside him. Most men, especially those who carry a strong sense of pride, rely on predictable patterns of validation. He tells a story about his success, expecting you to smile. He brags about his strength, expecting admiration. He subtly hints at his desirability, expecting your attention to rise. These small moments are tests, ways he measures his impact. And when those tests don't return the results he's used to, his ego feels a disturbance. He begins to wonder, why didn't she respond? Why isn't she impressed? What is she thinking? Remaining calm in the face of his confidence doesn't mean you're dismissing him. It means you're not controlled by the need to affirm him. That calmness is not cold, it's composed. It's a silent message that says, I see you, but I'm not moved just because you want me to be. And that message disrupts the dynamic he's used to. In that moment, he is not the one holding the attention. You are, because your restraint becomes the center of gravity in the conversation. This restraint isn't about being passive. It's about presence. A woman who is present, grounded, and emotionally self-sufficient commands more attention than one who rushes to validate. When you meet his stories with stillness, when you meet his charm with quiet curiosity instead of flattery, you subtly return the energy back to him. He now has to sit with his own need for praise. He has to question whether he truly made the impression he intended to. That space you hold, the one that doesn't immediately fill the silence with approval, becomes powerful. A man's ego isn't designed to thrive in uncertainty. It wants answers. It wants to know that he succeeded in making you feel something. But when you remain calm, when you don't react in the way he's used to, he feels a gap. And gaps create gravity. He starts thinking about how to close that gap. He replays the interaction in his mind. He reconsiders his words, his tone, his effect. And without realizing it, he is now emotionally engaged. Not because you tried to win him over, but because you didn't try at all. This power doesn't come from silence alone. It comes from the energy beneath that silence, the energy of knowing your worth, of not needing to prove anything, of not being seduced by surface-level confidence. When you stand in that energy, your calmness becomes magnetic. It signals to him that you are not seeking approval, you are observing, you are evaluating, you are choosing, and that unsettles him more than any rejection could. Men are used to being the pursuers, the ones who set the tone. But when you remain calm and unmoved, you take that role without force. You shift the balance. And in doing so, you quietly place yourself in his mind. Because now, he's not just thinking about how to impress you. He's thinking about why he even needs to. That reflection becomes an obsession all its own. A man may be surrounded by people who uplift him, who validate his strengths, and who praise his every move. In that environment, he grows comfortable. He begins to expect it. But when a woman enters his life and does not automatically hand him that validation, something shifts. She becomes an anomaly in his world. While others are quick to applaud, she observes. While others melt into admiration, she remains grounded. That difference disrupts his rhythm and forces him to pay attention. He begins to notice her not because she gives him what he wants, but because she withholds what he's used to getting without effort. When a woman questions a man, not with anger, but with genuine curiosity or subtle doubt, it introduces a new kind of energy into the conversation. It tells him that she sees beyond the surface, that her standards are not easily bent by charm or image, and that observation pierces his ego in a way that feels both threatening and exhilarating. He realizes he cannot glide through this interaction on autopilot. He has to be present. He has to be intentional. He has to earn her attention. And in that moment, the dynamic changes entirely. This shift pulls him closer. He becomes intrigued not just by her presence, but by her perception. What does she see? What does she think of him? Why isn't she falling in line with everyone else? These questions begin to echo in his mind, creating a psychological loop he cannot easily escape. He starts trying harder, not out of desperation, but out of fascination. He is not just trying to be seen, he is trying to be seen by her, because her opinion holds more weight, not because she gave it freely, but because she withheld it with grace. The woman who questions rather than praises becomes a mirror, not to his ego, but to his soul. She forces him to look deeper, to go beyond the rehearsed narratives he tells others. He feels exposed in her presence, yet strangely drawn to that feeling. He begins to crave the clarity she carries, the way she stands unaffected, the way she moves with her own rhythm. And soon, it's no longer about impressing her. It becomes about being understood by her. This level of intrigue is not born from manipulation or games. It is born from truth, from the truth of a woman who is not moved by surface, who waits for depth, who listens not to respond but to feel, that patience, that precision, that silent demand for something real. It awakens something in him, and that awakening becomes addictive, because now he's not chasing her approval, he's chasing the version of himself. She becomes the worthy of it. She becomes the compass that Prometheus is the condured, not by asking for more, but by silently expecting it. In a world where praise is cheap and attention is currency, the woman who doesn't spend hers easily becomes priceless. She doesn't need to raise her voice or play games. Her quiet discernment alone creates obsession, because she is no longer just a person in his life. She is the challenge his ego cannot solve. True feminine power doesn't announce itself with noise or demand attention through force. It resides in stillness, in presence, in the quiet knowing of one's worth. A woman who understands her value does not need to chase or convince. She does not need to prove her desirability or compete for recognition. Her energy alone speaks louder than any words. Shh. She knows that real power is not about controlling others, it's about mastering oneself. When she enters a space, her calm becomes the authority. She does not manipulate. She simply exists in a way that others feel power is magnotus. And it is deeply power is rare and where, in the imperturbable way to do them according to is. It draws people in not through effort, but through essence. There is nothing louder than a woman who is emotionally centered and spiritually rooted. When a man encounters her, he may not even understand at first why he is drawn to her. She may not fit the mold of what he thought he wanted. She may not flatter his ego or mirror his expectations, and yet he finds himself returning to her present, again and again, trying to filter out, uncover the mystery behind her detachment. Her strength lies in what she withholds. She does not give away her energy quickly. She does not validate for the sake of comfort. She listens, she observes, and she measures a man not by his performance, but by his consistency, by his depth, by his alignment. Her silence is not absence, it is assessment. She is not cold, she is discerning, and in that discernment she sends a clear message. I am not here to be won, I am here to be matched. That message disrupt most pattern most to you. That no path are you. She is not needy for attention. She is full within herself. She is nourished by her own peace. And because she is not swayed by compliments or power plays, she becomes untouchable to manipulation. Her emotional discipline becomes her shield. Her boundaries are not walls. They are gates, carefully opened only to those who have earned the right to step inside. This form of power does not seek to control by him, it simply refuses to be controlled by him. Her refuses to be controlled by him, and that refusal, delivered without anger or explanation, becomes a profound act of self-respect. Men who are used to being pursued will find themselves confused by her stillness. They will try harder, they will test, they will push, and when she does not bend, their curiosity will evolve into admiration, and admiration into obsession. Because what she holds cannot be taken, it must be invited, and that invitation is never rushed. It is given only when trust is established, only when consistency is proven, only when depth is revealed. This is the kind of power that transforms rooms, shifts dynamics, and reshapes the way a man sees himself. Not because she demanded it, but because her presence required it. She doesn't chase, she chooses. And in that choice, she becomes unforgettable. Because in a world filled with noise, her silence is power. Her energy is the lesson. Her restraint is the spark that lights the fire of obsession without a single word. When a woman reflects a man's soul instead of feeding his ego, something inside him shifts. The ego craves praise, surface-level recognition, and quick validation. It wants to be admired for achievements, appearance, power, and status. But the soul seeks something entirely different. It longs to be seen for what lies beneath, for the quiet fears, hidden dreams, and unspoken truths that the world rarely asks about. When a woman bypasses the shiny exterior and touches the deeper parts of a man, she awakens something within him that he didn't even know was sleeping. That awakening creates a bond far stronger than physical attraction or shallow admiration. It creates obsession. Most of the world interacts with his ego. People clap for his titles, laugh at his jokes, and compliment his strengths. But none of those things truly stay with him. They pass through like a breeze, nice for a moment then gone. But when he meets someone who sees the storm behind his eyes, who senses the weight he carries but never speaks about, that moment becomes unforgettable. Suddenly he doesn't just feel liked, he feels understood. He doesn't just feel seen, he feels known, and that kind of connection imprints itself on his mind. The reason this becomes so powerful is because it is so rare. In a world built on appearances and performance, most interactions remain shallow. So when a woman sits in stillness and listens to the pauses between his words, when she notices what he avoids and asks the questions no one else dares to ask, she becomes a mirror, not to his ego, but to his essence. She is no longer just another voice in the crowd. She becomes the silence he didn't know he needed. He starts to return to her not just physically but mentally and emotionally. Her presence lingers. He replays her words, her tone, her eyes. He wonders what she saw in him that no one else did. And the more he thinks about it, the more he wants to return. Not to conquer her, but to be fully seen again. Because once a person tastes soul-level recognition, surface validation no longer satisfies. He begins to crave that depth, and she becomes the source of it. This woman does not try to make herself unforgettable. She simply holds space for truth. She does not flatter his ego. She invites his authenticity, and that invitation cannot be faked or forced. It comes from a deep place of inner clarity, of self-worth, of emotional intelligence. She sees not what he wants to show, but what he's trying to hide. And she does it without judgment, without fear, without needing anything in return. In her presence, he is not just admired, he is revealed. And revelation is addictive. The woman who reflects a man's soul becomes a part of his internal landscape. Long after she leaves the room, he remains in conversation with her in his mind, because she didn't mirror what the world already tells him. She mirrored the man he's still becoming, and that kind of reflection is something he will chase, remember, and return to again and again.